The last dungeon is cleared. After the young heroes completed their mission, the dungeon began to collapse, and if they stop for even a second, they will remain under the rubble of the cave, as well as angry monsters chasing them. The guys notice that there are too many monsters and they will catch up with them at this rate. At this moment, a selfless warrior whose name is Seo MoonYeob appears behind their backs. He decided to detain the mutants so that his comrades would successfully escape. At the same time, a worried comrade shouted to him, "What is he doing?" But MoonYeob just smiled and wished that the surviving guys would write a book about such a great man like him. Humanity had no idea that they were not the only ones who created civilization on Earth. There was also an underground world. Those who lived underground created their own civilization, exactly the same as on Earth. Until one day they suddenly invaded the surface. At the same time, humanity was faced with the threat of inevitable destruction. Soon people began their counterattack, but no ordinary weapons could injure outsiders, because they possessed mystical powers that surpassed the blows of ordinary weapons. However, the situation has changed. The mystical power of the underworld has begun to amaze humanity. The people it affected turned into superhumans with abilities they had not possessed before. Now, having received a new power, humanity continued to fight against this underground civilization. Capturing the dungeons one by one, they had hope, and after countless amounts of time, people reached the gates of the subterranean dungeon. In the spring of the 25th year, the 7 strongest superhumans gathered together. They entered the last dungeon, which was the foundation of the underground civilization, and ended this long war. For their great achievements, they were nicknamed as the 7 heroes who saved humanity. They received many awards, as well as great respect and fame, but among them was a man who never returned. The opening ceremony of the statue in the name of Seo MoonYeob. Seo MoonYeob was the leader of the 7 heroes. He was the only one who did not survive. The remaining warriors became stars, and the dead hero became a legend. And so 17 years have passed. International Arena, Seoul. Representative game of South Korea against France. There was a dangerous moment in the arena. France launched its attack and the Korean players could not respond properly. Nathan Bernard continued to mercilessly kill South Korean players. Soon the guy single-handedly committed 6 murders, thereby he amazed the whole audience. Commentators are wondering if there has ever been such a strong player since the creation of the International Battlefield League. This blonde guy is among the top 3 superhumans of the Battlefield era. While the Korean national team is on the verge of destruction, they have no way to counterattack. The last player left, and this is Baek Ha-young. Commentators do not believe that Yellow-Eyed is able to win alone, when suddenly she headed towards Bernard. The girl decided to use her ability like a whip, aiming at the enemy's head, but the guy in front of her disappears and then Bernard says that she is strong, as expected from the daughter of one of the 7 heroes. However, the blonde notices that she will never defeat him with such a team. After these words, he strikes and cuts the girl into pieces. But now South Korea has lost. Their national team could not stop the best player of France. In the second set, Bernard made 7 kills, thereby ending the match with a perfect score of 2-0. It was a shame for Korea, which had many great superhumans who cleared a huge number of dungeons during the era of the war with the underworld. But she was never able to adapt to the changed world. This match was watched by head coach Baek Jiho, and at the same time the commentators continued their speech. The country that raised 2 of the greatest heroes who saved humanity, Seo MoonYeob and Baek Jiho, won a crushing defeat. The bespectacled commentator notes that although France is a strong team, this game was very sad. The black-haired reporter supports his colleague and assures him that the people of their country are very upset by this defeat. The comments under the stream, as well as the audience from the stands, were disappointed in what was happening. They were not going to pay money to watch such a shitty game. One of the 7 heroes, Baek Jiho, is also disappointed, because this is the 3rd defeat since he became the head coach of this national team. The module of the Baek Ha-young capsule was disconnected. As the audience said, the entire team with the exception of the girl is simply insignificant. Korean superhumans were known for their power and will, but from now on it's in the past. Now their spirit is at the absolute bottom. All the strong superhumans of this country have disappeared or died. Baek Jiho enters the waiting room and addresses his missing friend, who was depicted in a joint portrait, because everything would be different if he were alive. At that moment, there was a knock on the door and soon a young man appeared on the threshold, who asked the head coach to go to a press conference, because everyone was waiting for him there. Exhaling, the man agrees, because he really should go and apologize to the audience for being made the head coach. Baek Jiho notices that everything is useless, because with this team they will not be able to win. The fact is that they are too weak, and they also do not have any foundations and fortitude to win in such a competition. However, the red-haired boy is trying to calm the man down, because it hasn't been that long since Baek Jiho became the head coach. But these words do not convince the hero and he decides to announce his resignation during this press conference, but the guy tries to convince the coach. At the same time, Baek Jiho states that only if Seo MoonYeob does not return alive or something like that, he will remain in his position, but since this is unrealistic, he should leave as soon as possible so as not to tarnish his reputation even more. The hero cannot refuse this chance, and now he will finally be able to resign. At this moment Baek Jiho distracts the ringing phone. Picking it up, he notices that the president of the association is calling him and decides that most likely they want to tell him off. At the same time, the man picks up the phone and hears the worried voice of the boss. He asks Baek Jiho if he has heard the news. The guy knew that the conversation would be about this, and says that he personally saw how they were humiliated at the international battle. But the president of the association is not talking about this, and hearing the news Baek Jiho was stunned. At this time, a portal opened from the sky and an unknown person landed near the statue of the legendary hero. Soon, all the news was trumpeted about this news, statues of three great people, Admiral Lee Soon-sin, King Sejong, as well as the man who saved the remaining heroes 17 years ago by sacrificing himself Seo MoonYeob were installed in Gwanghwamun Square. The people gathered around the knight in bloody armor were amazed. In the fallen guy, they recognized the legendary hero. Baek Jiho continued to stand motionless. At the same time the president of the association began to shout even louder into the phone. Does the man not understand what he was told? Seo MoonYeob is back. Remaining in the dungeon in order to gain time for his comrades, he desperately fought against ferocious monsters, but despite their numerical superiority, the black-haired guy did not lose his head and waited until the door to the dungeon closed and began his confrontation. Seo MoonYeob wasn't going to die in a place like this, when suddenly he woke up in a hospital bed. Soon a nurse came into the ward. At the same time the confused hero asked what kind of place it was. The excited girl replied that it was a hospital, and she also hurried to clarify the self-sensitivity of her patient. However, the guy was not up to it. Soon after the conversation he was shocked and could not believe the above, because according to the girl, it was now 2022nd year, but Sun MoonYeob was sure that he entered the last dungeon in 2005th year. The employee realized that it was hard to believe her words, so she decides to explain the current situation in a slightly different way. After that she turns on the TV and asks Seo MoonYeob to watch the news. They also say that Seo MoonYeob, the leader of the 7 heroes, who was previously considered dead, returned after 17 years. The hero himself fell from the sky in Gwanghwamun and was found in front of his own statue. But now he is unconscious in the hospital. There is no threat to his life, he has only minor injuries. The thing that surprised the reporters was that he was wearing the same armor in which he entered the last dungeon in 2005th year. Although Seo MoonYeob is a Superman, but his appearance has not changed at all after 17 years. As a result, some experts suggest that it could be spatially time distortion. Having heard such a thing, the world hero was confused. It was hard for him to believe that 17 years had really passed, because for him it was literally 2005th year yesterday. The employee announces that this is exactly how it is, which is why reporters set up their camp under the windows of this institution. The black-haired guy thought and noticed, even though 17 years have passed, but these annoying reporters have not changed. Seo MoonYeob asks the girl for a mirror and she, after searching a little, hands him the desired object. Looking into the reflection, the hero notices that he really has not aged a bit, but it is impossible to look so young in his 47 years. Did a space-time distortion really happen to him? He realizes that he knows absolutely nothing about what happened during this time, when suddenly a sober thought comes to his head. With fear in his eyes, he asks the girl what happened to his savings. At the same time, the nurse says that as it was written in his will, all his money was transferred to the Children's Protection Fund, so the black-haired guy helped every child. After hearing this, obscene language went on in Manhwa. At the same time Seo MoonYeob asks what about his house. The girl hurries to please him with the following news that since this place is the birthplace of the famous Seo MoonYeob, his house has become a museum. At the same time, he had the last thing in this life, a car. He asks what's wrong with it. At the same time the employee replies that his car was sold at a charity auction. Hearing this, the guy's eyes dimmed, and the soul went to the afterlife. When he came to himself, he squeezed his hands and said that he could not live in a hospital. He was not only poor, but also almost homeless. If he had known that everything would turn out this way, he would have left at least a little money. After hearing this, the girl grinned and hurried to calm the desperate hero, because the guy saved the world and they would dare to mock him like that. Since she says that Mr. Baek Jiho has heard about what happened and is already rushing to this hospital, the girl promises to notify Seo MoonYeob as soon as he arrives. After that, the woman leaves and also asks the guy if he suddenly needs something, then pressed the button near the bed. Even seeing with his own eyes, he still couldn't believe what was happening. Now he needs to find out more information from Baek Jiho, but first he decides to check the condition of his body. After that, he decides to use the skill Eyes of Analysis. This ability allows you to analyze and visualize the talents and abilities of living entities. The information obtained can only be seen by the user of the skill. This superpower allowed him to become the strongest Superman in the world, because these eyes see not only the current abilities of the target, but also their future potential, which is why he was able to develop faster than anyone else. At that time, all the articles were filled with young talent. At the same time, at such an early age, he was able to become the leader of a raid in Hangovers, and also one day an inexperienced youngster who wanted to become his disciple turned to him. It was Baek Jiho who became one of those famous heroes. Although the guy looked like an ordinary loser, but with the help of his eyes, Seo MoonYeob saw an unusually high potential in him. At the same time, he decided to take him as an apprentice, on the condition that if Baek Jiho dies following him, then he is not to blame. On this strange note, they became comrades. Looking at his stats now, the guy notices that everything remains as before: strength 79, agility 97, speed 76, when suddenly among the stats he notices that his strength has a value of 110 points. This strange phenomenon confused Seo MoonYeob, because as you know, the maximum limit of talent had 100 units, but he has 110. And he also has a new superpower that he didn't have before. The skill is called Immortal. Now he has immunity to death from physical impact. The black-haired guy is amazed at the presence of such a broken ability. After a little thought, he remembers that new superpowers can be created in special situations. Thinking about it, he assumes that she could well have appeared because of that battle, when suddenly he was distracted by someone calling his name. Turning his head, Seo MoonYeob notices a man at the entrance to the ward. And he is surprised to discern in the businessman his old friend Jiho. From this, an adult man has tears in his eyes. He cannot believe that his mentor, as well as a friend, has really returned. Seo MoonYeob, with a smile on his face, declares that apparently Jiho has become much weaker. Rubbing his wet eyes, he replies that it's all because it's peacetime. After the man finished crying, the partners went out on the roof to drink coffee. Jiho assures his friend that he will soon realize that people become more sentimental with age. But the cheerful Seo MoonYeob does not understand what his old friend is talking about, because the black-haired one is still young. Soon the resurrected hero is in a hurry to find out if his friends kept their promise. But Jiho doesn't understand what his young friend is talking about. At the same time, Seo MoonYeob says that he means his biography. At the same time, a man with a smile on his face says that for this case he hired the best writer who was known in the fantasy genre. He wrote a masterpiece about the legendary hero. Even documentaries and action films were shot at the behest of Seo MoonYeob. They were made as if it were some kind of story from myths. All the projects became popular, and for a long time occupied the first places in the world box office. This is all good. Then the black-haired guy wonders what he should do. After all, he already thought he was dead, but when he opened his eyes, he found himself in the hospital. Now 17 years have passed. The world is filled with things he knows nothing about. Although he is sure that everything that is happening is real, Seo MoonYeob still does not fear reality. Despite the fact that he is a hero who saved the world, at the moment, he is an ordinary homeless person. At this moment, Jiho grabs his friend by the shoulder and says that if the black-haired man needs money, then he should just say so. After hearing this, Seo MoonYeob cheered up. He notices that his student has really grown up and now he is wondering what Jiho has been doing lately. At the same time, the man with glasses tells that he still has the money he earned during the raids in the dungeon, and the reward for the last battle was huge. But even despite these riches, he could not sit idly by, because there is a limitation in the amount of earnings. Hearing such a thing, the black-haired hero doubted, because even if his student has a large amount of money, it's hard to believe that some business could stay afloat, especially with such an idiot as Jiho. These words pierced the man like lightning, and although it hurts him to admit it, he entrusted this matter to professionals. Now Seo MoonYeob laughed, because it turns out that Jiho is also unemployed, but the man denied the fact and quietly stated that he is the head coach of the national team. The black-haired man did not understand a word about what his friend said. At the same time, the guy with glasses sighed and decided to show everything using his smartphone. Soon he handed the phone to his mentor, and he saw a strange sight. After what he saw, Seo MoonYeob wondered if the dungeons he had passed had not disappeared. At the same time, Jiho replied that this is a virtual reality sport called Battlefield. They have materialized the dungeons in virtual reality, and use them as fields for team battles. The guy with glasses explains that this is a new business that uses superhumans who have become useless after the war. Now this sport has become extremely popular since its inception. Judging by what he saw, Seo MoonYeob decides that only small children play this. But Jiho assures him that the guy is very wrong, because players with a high rating can compare with 7 heroes. And also the Battlefield World Cup ranking is a matter of national pride. Hearing this, the black-haired hero is interested in where South Korea is, but a worried Jiho asks again. At the same time, turning his head around, Seo MoonYeob declares that his friend is deaf from old age and again asks his question: what place does South Korea occupy? The black-haired man swung an empty cup and noticed that despite the fact that they have a small population, they must have a lot of strong guys, which is why he is sure that they will be in a high position in this small game. At the same time, Jiho said with sadness in his eyes that South Korea was at the very bottom. Hearing this, Seo MoonYeob missed and shot the cup past the trash. When the great evil disappears, the next evil is the one who will kill him first. Such loud words were uttered by Jiho in his car, but the black-haired hero did not understand what his friend meant. At the same time, a man with glasses explains that this is why their country became a weak nation on the battlefield. After the war, officials began to fear superhumans who had nowhere to go, because they were not sure that they would not be stabbed in the back. Therefore, Battlefield was strictly regulated. For the participation of superhumans with destructive power, they tried to put anyone under state control. The same happened with Jiho. After hearing the words of his partner, Seo MoonYeob understood the situation. All Korean superhumans who were considered strong at one time emigrated to other countries and became players or coaches. Jiho confirmed his mentor's guess. That's exactly what happened, so there were no strong fighters left in Korea because of the government. Even at the time of Seo MoonYeob, there were many people who tried to use them for their own purposes. He knew that they should break their knees. A tense-back Jiho says that in any case, their starting point is not very good now and the average level of players is quite low, therefore. At this moment, the black-haired man says no. The man with glasses didn't even have time to say anything as he was already refused. But for the head coach, this refusal was a serious blow, because Seo MoonYeob is now only 30 years old, and his skills at the height are a waste of talent. However, the black-haired man does not agree with this expression, because he does not spend anything, so MoonYeob no longer wants to live like a Superman, because his life ended heroically in the last dungeon. Jiho says that the guy will no longer have to fight with the feeling for a long time, because it's just a sport. However, the hero declares that he has never had a sense of duty, after which he asks if he really looks like someone who will fight for others. The black-haired man says that he used to fight only for survival and for his place in this world, which he received after becoming a Superman. And now it's time to live for yourself. On top of that, if he joins this toy, the press will disperse in earnest, they will create inflated expectations, and in the end, everything will fall on his shoulders again. After hearing a decent answer, Jiho calms down, when suddenly another object attracts Seo MoonYeob's attention, and he declares that Korean players are not completely hopeless. After these words, he pointed his finger at the banner, and said that they still have someone like her. Soon, examining a buxom woman, he begins to praise her figure and offers to evaluate her and his friend, because she is damn sexy. However, Jiho was not verbose and said that this was his daughter. But Seo MoonYeob can't believe this nonsense, because his daughter is only 6 years old. At the same time, the man reminds that 17 years have passed and the girl is already 23 years old. The excited hero recalls this fact and confusedly says that she is really beautiful now and looks completely different. But Jiho can't listen to this and asks MoonYeob to stop. Soon the guys arrived at their destination. They were met at the door by Han Sung-hee. She is the wife of Baek Jiho. She is glad to see Mr. MoonYeob again, because they haven't seen each other for so long, but for the guy it's only been 1 week since the last meeting. Hearing this, the girl laughed at how she had aged in 1 week, But the black-haired man does not agree with her words and declares that she is still as beautiful as before. The girl joyfully meets her husband, but now Seo MoonYeob is sure that people have really returned to normal life, to a peaceful time without dungeons and fighting. Having made sure of this, the question arose in front of him: what should he do next? The black-haired man decided to stay with Jiho. Lying on the couch and watching TV, he stumbles upon a repeat of his favorite drama called Stairway to Hell. Now he had a reason for which he returned alive. Passing Mimeo, Jiho found the joyful exclamations of his friend, who did not have enough beer to watch the series to a pile of chips, and he also said that he was going to watch all the top dramas that he had missed since the beginning of the 2005 year. Hearing this, the man rushed to his sick friend and decided to ask him again, is he really going to stay at home for days and just watch TV? Seeing the indignation of his old friend, Seo MoonYeob recalls the words of Jiho, which said that a homeless person can stay with him. The man with glasses confirms his words, but he is concerned about the fact that reporters outside the window have been waiting for the return of the hero for several days, and also these madmen said they would not leave until they saw him. From what he heard, the hero in sports shoes was confused and, after a little thought, agreed that this case could not be left just like that, so he asks his friend to tell them that he will give an interview tomorrow, so they should not get him today. Soon the next day came. All possible cameras were pointed at the scene and were ready to film the appearance of the hero. There were a lot of rumors among the reporters. Some of them thought that they would have to sit in front of his house for more than a month, but it turned out to be much faster. Also, some have heard about him that when something does not like Seo MoonYeob, he starts to get violent and destroy everything in his path, so they are looking forward to the start of the conference. Soon the black-haired man in a tracksuit got to the microphone and began his speech. The conversation started with the fact that he really returned. The hero himself was surprised by this fact, just like everyone present. Jiho, hearing how his friend started the interview smoothly, rejoiced. Because all his past performances were terrible, he hopes that everything will continue like this. At this moment, Seo MoonYeob declares that he is already sick of all the attention that is focused on his person, so he agrees to answer all possible questions today and asks never to approach him again. Hearing this, Jiho was depressed, because his friend remained exactly the same as before. There were a lot of people who wanted to ask a question. The first question was about how the hero managed to get out of the last dungeon alive. But the guy himself did not know the answer to this, he just woke up to the answer. Soon the next one came out and asked if Seo MoonYeob remembered the last 17 years? No, for him, the 25th year was just a couple of days ago. At the same time, the following question was received about whether the black-haired man communicated with other heroes of the last war. Seo MoonYeob claims that this did not happen, because they are not close, and only work connected them. The next man with a cool hairstyle raised his hand. He was interested in whether the guy had heard about a game called the Battle of Superhumans, and whether he had a chance to go to Cybersoft. This question interested crowds of people and Jiho knew that someone would surely ask it. At the same time, the hero in sports shoes said that he had no desire. After hearing such an answer, a man with a dissatisfied face wanted to hear an explanation of this answer, but the black-haired man did not see the need to explain it. At the same time, the man said that the guy was simply not capable of it. In response, Seo MoonYeob grinned and agreed that if he was an old man with receding hairline, he might have thought so. Soon he said that he just didn't like the sport, and wasn't going to be a clown. After that, he hopes that he has partially satisfied the curiosity of the reporters, and with that, he hopes that he will not be disturbed again from that day on. He said goodbye and headed for the exit, and Jiho stood behind the microphone. When suddenly a request was heard from the audience to stop, the boy had one last question to the great hero. The guy with the slick hairstyle says that yesterday the player Gerald Walker said that the glory of the Seven Saviors is in the past, and they will never defeat him, so the reporter would like to hear an answer to this loud statement of one of the heroes. The black-haired man in the Adidas uniform asks the name of the brazen player again, and at the same time the boy in glasses hurries to explain that this is a famous American esports player, and he is also called the best American tank. After hearing this, Seo MoonYeob wonders if this Gerald Walker is the best of the best. However, the reporter says that this is not the case. The top three at the moment is occupied by Nathan Bernard, a Frenchman, Roy Mayer, an Irishman, and Daniel Mansky, a German. The guy, adjusting his glasses, continues to say that Walker is an outstanding player, but he does not go to this legendary three. Hearing this, the guy grinned, because if so many years have passed and he has not even entered the top three, then Seo MoonYeob will not even talk to him. And if he wants to fight him, then he won't fight some child's game. The black-haired one wants this walker to come and tell him to his face. MoonYeob is ready to bury the loser in the garden with these mighty hands. At that time, influential people were watching the online broadcast, and in response to the noble gesture of the hero, they had no words. One of these people was Zachary Wood from the American Esports Agency. He called Walker and told him about what was happening. Out of anger, the bald-headed man broke his phone. Now he urgently needs a ticket to Korea. A scream rang out in Jiho's wake. The man was talking on his mobile phone and was very surprised that very soon they would have a Premier League with the USA. Meanwhile, MoonYeob, lying on the couch, was not very happy with the behavior of a friend who interfered with watching TV and drinking beer, so he asked Jiho to talk somewhere else. Soon, a man in a shirt sits down in a chair and explains that his team will have a Premier League with America in 2 weeks, and it's all because of MoonYeob, because he provoked them. But the black-haired man does not understand what Jiho is talking about. Then he hurries to remind how the insolent man announced that he would bury the loser in the garden. And now Walker clearly lost his temper after these words. Besides, he publicly reminded him that he never entered the top 3. Apparently this triggered him. Now he wants to fight him, but because MoonYeob is not a player, he will have to take out his anger on the Korean national team. Hearing this, the black-haired man does not understand what their team has to do with it, and decides that this Gerald Walker is a complete moron. Jiho Pashi is in the shit, and the returning hero wishes him good luck, and also declares that he will cheer for him lying on the couch. When suddenly a guy in a tracksuit gets up and assumes that if they have the Premier League on their nose, then Baek Jiho's daughter will have to come because she is in the national team. Soon, a noise is heard on the ferry, and the hero lying on the couch does not understand who is so loudly spiteful at the door. The mother greets her daughter. It turns out that Baek Ha-young hurried to come home when she found out that her uncle had returned. Well, she also wanted to see her parents. After that she asks her mother where her uncle is now, and she immediately replies that he is in the living room. After going to the designated place, she saw the homeless hero and joyfully greeted the poor guy, after which she jumped into his arms and almost strangled him. Seo MoonYeob asks her not to do this anymore, because she is no longer small, and you can kill her. The girl can't believe her eyes, because her uncle really has returned. The guy did not expect such a reaction. He thought that the girl had already forgotten him. But she couldn't just forget him, because he was constantly playing with her, and also treated Ha-young with chocolate cookies. Even her parents didn't spoil her so much. MoonYeob notices that the children are really growing very fast, and the girl with a smile on her face announces that she is already 23 years old. In the middle of the conversation, the guy is interested in the fact that she really came because of the Premier League. But the girl declares that this is not the case. First of all, she wanted to see her uncle, and the game is just an additional quest. Ha-young is interested. Is MoonYeob really not interested in esports? Hearing this, the guy grabs his head and assumes that it was her Jiho who put her up to it, after which he apologizes and declares that he does not have the slightest interest in this, because he has enough to do without it. At the same time, the girl grabs the guy by the hand and asks if he will refuse, even if she asks him. However, the black-haired man immediately refuses without hesitation. Hearing this, the girl begins to take offense and declares that her uncle is not the same as before, but the guy says that on the contrary, everyone around has changed. Ha-young turned away in frustration in the other direction, because this is the first time her beloved uncle refused her something. Before he always did what she strongly asked. Soon it dawned on the girl and she asks to fulfill her other request, namely, she needs to do an avatar test in the association, so she asks MoonYeob to go with her. At that moment, the final episode of his favorite TV series called The Gates to Hell was shown on the TV. But the girl made cute eyes and persistently asked him to do at least that, because her father is busy now and there is no one else to go to. At the same time, unable to withstand such a strong pressure, he has no choice but to agree, but he does not know where it is. But the girl does not see this as a problem. She will show him everything. The Superhuman Battle Association in Korea. Entering the building, they are greeted and then asked to follow the employee. He will help Ha-young test his avatar. Soon a check of weapons and armor began, after which about 3 of them connected her, and an image appeared on the screen. The girl told her uncle to look carefully, after which she asked to be given a recreated monster to warm up. A ferocious monster appears in front of the girl. What he saw struck the guy. He did not expect that people had learned to do this. Soon the consultant explains that the Battle of Superhumans is a virtual sport in which, with the help of advanced association technologies, they generate dungeon monsters and virtual reality players. When players come to the association for the first time, they are first asked to create an avatar for themselves, and indeed MoonYeob notices that Ha Young is a little different from the real one, but however it does not matter, he is interested in how good she is in business. A ferocious wolf rushes at the girl, but she, holding a weapon in her hands, disappears from the place and cuts off the beast's head, after which the employee announces that the synchronization of the avatar was successful and now the woman can go out. After disconnecting from the capsule, the girl went to her uncle to get his opinion, but MoonYeob gloatingly said that she had great potential for a 6-year-old girl. These words slightly angered Ha Young, and then she suggested that he try it himself if he thinks he can do better. However, the guy said that he would not participate in this, but the girl declares that this is not necessary. She asks him to just try and that's it. She is very curious. Ha Young has heard about the power of the legendary hero since the stories from her father, and now she is impatient to see it with her own eyes. She grew up without ever seeing him in battle. Seeing Ha Young's sad face, the guy could not refuse and agreed to participate in this event only once, and then because she asks. The girl was shocked by what she heard. A consultant got involved in the conversation. He said that as a rule, before creating an avatar, they conduct ability testing, but since MoonYeob is not going to compete, he will be allowed to immediately start creating an avatar. Hearing this, he asks what he needs to do. At the same time, the man in the suit explains that if the guy enters the module in this form, then his avatar will be created unarmed and in sweatpants, so first he will have to choose a weapon. Picking up a shield and a sword, MoonYeob notices that this is a little different from what he used to use at the time, because this neglect is too easy. At the same time, an employee of the association explains that this is a standard weapon. Usually players have their own customized weapons, but they only have this in the training room. MoonYeob throws the shield and says that this spear will suit him. Soon he got into the module and started connecting to the virtual world. He himself was a little interested to see what it was. Before entering the world, the system performed a body scan, collected a weapon analysis, and shortly after a few seconds, an avatar was generated based on the received information. MoonYeob opened his eyes and heard the consultant's voice. The man explained that the black-haired man was now in a virtual room of a complete copy of their training hall. After examining his hands, the guy noticed that the sensations in this game are completely similar to those that he experienced when entering the dungeon gate. The guy was distracted by the screen that appeared. The man with glasses announced that the synchronization between the avatar and the body was successful. While warming up, MoonYeob asked for any opponent, just like they did for Ha Young. At the same time, out of nowhere, by pressing a key, a one-eyed monster appeared in the game, and his name is Superhuman. The hero recognized this creature, but he feels that this one is a little different from those that he came across at the time. The consultant confirms MoonYeob's remark. Because this individual is special and it can only be injured with the help of an aura, it is also created according to the data on the strongest of the previously existing individuals of the Superhuman. At that moment, the angry monster headed for the motionless boy. At the same time, MoonYeob realized that he had brought this spear here in vain, after which he put out his hand and the monster in front of him literally split into atoms. From amazement, the guys opened up. After that, Ha Young asked the question, did Uncle kill Superhuman with a snap of his finger? Everything was like that, but the guy didn't see anything special in it. The consultant was also quite surprised, although Superhuman is not the strongest of the monsters, but it is impossible to kill him with a snap of his fingers. MoonYeob is not interested in listening to these reflections, and he asks to generate something stronger for him, because he wants to check something. Having made sure that he does not feel the difference between cyberspace and real life, he decided to try out the same thing here, and also despite the fact that he had the strongest Superhuman in front of him, he never managed to warm up. At that moment, he heard someone else's words in English. The unknown said that it was not surprising, because they say that Seo MoonYeob is the strongest of superhumans, so some Superhuman can't compete with him. At the same time, the man in the suit was at a loss. The program was crashing, because someone was trying to connect from an external source. Gerald Walker suddenly appeared in virtual reality. He was literally emitting fire from himself. Walker accepted the hero's invitation and, as he had invited, appeared in order to fight with him. Looking at the emotionless face of the black-haired Walker assumed that the great hero was really scared, because he Vidal assumed that he would actually come. But now Gerald Walker is trying to prove that all these heroes are worthless. With these words, he rushed at the guy in the tracksuit and struck his blow. However, his mighty axe did not hit the intended target. At the same time, the impudent man had cold goosebumps on his back, because he clearly heard the speech behind his back. MoonYeob said that he had not yet experienced fear, he just thought about the test he was planning. The opponents stood motionless opposite each other. The audience did not understand what was happening. At the same time, the door to the hall opened, and the gray-haired president of the association announced that this battle would be held with his permission. The audience was surprised, especially Ha-young, because her father said he would be busy all day. At the same time, the gray-haired man explains that all this was agreed in advance, and he regrets that they were not informed about what was happening. After that, Park Jin-tae turns to the lady standing next to her, asking if she is happy. Standing in front of him was Emma Morse, a woman who is Gerald Walker's manager. She is very grateful to the president of the association, because she herself understands how difficult this request was. But the man himself should be grateful, because of this case, MoonYeob may become interested in esports. At this time, the battle of the two geniuses continued in the arena. After they crossed the maples, a real storm arose on the site, after which the guys jumped in different directions. The black-haired man is surprised, because this big guy in front of him is better than he expected. At the same time, he decides to use an analyzing look, and with the help of it, he notices that the bully's strength and endurance parameters have reached their maximum, and willpower has 87 units. With such parameters, he is really ideal for the role of a tank. Previously, MoonYeob thought that he was just a hot-tempered idiot in front of him, but it looks like there is something to add to his idioticism. The bald-headed man could not stand the visual pressure from the guy in sports shoes and asked him why he was standing and staring like a moron. But the black-haired man did not respond to the words of this idiot. But apparently this Walker is not just a talker. If he had been during the appearance of the last Hangover, MoonYeob would have taken him on a raid without a doubt, and the fool's superpower is also ideal for a tank. It gives him additional buffs to armor and willpower. At this moment, the black-haired man remembers his main goal. He also discovered a new ability when he found himself in the hospital, and he wanted to test this superpower on Sullivan. But it will be much better on this big guy. The guy shortens the distance in a second. Walker makes a swing with his weapon, but he was at a loss. The guy stopped right in front of him for some reason, but despite this, the bald-headed man was not going to stop and struck his blow. Ha-young exclaimed. She didn't understand why the uncle stopped and let himself be hit. Walker knew that the girl was right. MoonYeob for some reason abruptly stopped his attack, as if he wanted to be killed. At that moment, the black-haired man's voice rang out. It turned out to be much more painful than he expected. After that, an explosion occurred near Walker, namely, a spear pierced the wall, but the man did not understand what was happening, because the guy had to die. Besides, he did not even defend himself. There was a cough in the fog. MoonYeob did not understand. Was this annoying smoke generated for him? And soon the great hero seemed to be an ordinary mortal and asked the audience how they did this trick. He promised to show you something interesting. Gerald Walker did not understand how the guy could survive after such a blow. At the same time, the black-haired man says that he received a cool superpower after a failed date with death, and now he is immortal. His test of the new ability gave a positive result. Not only did he not die, but also the superpower heals the wound quickly. However, MoonYeob is not happy with this ability, because if this continues, then duels will not be interesting. At the same time, the hero in sports shoes turns to the administrator in glasses and declares that he is immortal and asks if it is possible to block the action of this superpower for the duration of the game. The surprised guy with glasses said that it could be easily arranged. A second later, by pressing one key, this superpower was turned off for the guy. Now, MoonYeob will not allow Baldhead to justify his defeat by saying that he has such an ability. A man with a shield in his hands makes sure that the black-haired man is really a show-off, as rumor has it, but now Walker can't wait to check how much his skills are exaggerated by rumors. Raising his spear, MoonYeob said that the real experience of fighting with him would be different from what a man could hear, because he is much stronger than people can imagine. The American player is tired of listening to the guy's excuses and he demands that he get up and fight with him. However, MoonYeob advises a man to defeat the 3 best players first in battle, because you can't bypass 4 demon warlords and immediately attack the demon king. That's not how things are done. Hearing this, the man was furious and rushed at the boy, but MoonYeob calmly reflected all the blows with a smile on his face, and soon he disappeared again in front of Walker. When suddenly he was behind him and let him know it, the man tried to turn around, but the black-haired man was not going to wait for this and struck his blow. The bald-headed man miraculously managed to dodge. He turned out to have a good reputation, and this despite the fact that he is greatly hampered by a huge shield. However, MoonYeob decided that it was time for him to wrap up. At the same time, the legendary homeless hero swung and threw his weapon. The spear flew straight into the shield, and the American player was slammed into the wall. After that, the exhausted Walker fell to the floor. He was surprised that the guy was specifically aiming at his shield. The spear changed the direction of flight right before the collision with the shield. This is the first time he sees such supernatural control over weapons. Now he realized what the main hero of humanity is. Seo MoonYeob. The black-haired man announces that he has won, but the bald-headed man does not agree, because the spear passed on a tangent and he is still alive. But MoonYeob explains that he did it intentionally. He left the big guy alive, and he is still dissatisfied with something. The hero also declares that Walker will never defeat him with this huge shield. The man does not understand what the black-haired boy is carrying. The guy in sports shoes advises the bully to choose a smaller shield, because if the man is big, it does not mean that he needs a big shield. MoonYeob gives him advice for the fact that the bald-headed man turned out to be not just a talker, but because of the large shield, he really sees the situation poorly. The hero is also sure that Walker has been told since childhood that he has tunnel vision, and judging by the man's reaction, he turns out to be right. All this is because Walker chose a big shield. With strong opponents who will be able to use this lack of visibility against the tank, he will not have a chance to win, so MoonYeob sincerely advises him to change a large shield to a small one, taking into account the level of his dexterity. This will definitely be the right decision. The man is surprised by what he has heard and asks if the kid is lying, but there is no need for Moon to lie, because even if Walker follows his advice, the guy in sports shoes will still be a head taller in battle. At the same time, Walker agrees with difficulty and decides to try in the future. Watching what was happening, the head coach of Korea furiously did not understand why MoonYeob was teaching already strong opponents. After the black-haired man has finished his experiment, he declares that his work is over, so he is going to go on watching TV series. But before he leaves, he asks Gerald Walker for a cash payment for such generous advice and training, so he should transfer the money when he returns. The man agrees, but he has a condition. He wants another duel and asks to fight with him in the Premier League in 2 weeks. However, MoonYeob did not appreciate the joke. He also said that he was not going to play this battle of superhumans. Besides, he has a very large number of episodes of the drama ahead, and also he has already changed his mind. He does not need money for training, so the black-haired man asks him to leave him alone. But Walker can't put up with such an answer. He promises to pay anything, just so that MoonYeob is at the competition, but the poor guy resists and asks him to fuck off. But the bald-headed man went completely crazy. There was complete madness in his eyes. The man insists that such a talented hero should undoubtedly participate in the game, and not sit his ass on the couch and degrade. But MoonYeob is fighting for his freedom, and declares that he himself will decide how to use his abilities. These women's disputes lasted for a long time, and watching what was happening, a brilliant idea came to the president of the association. On the following day, MoonYeob continued to lie on the couch and watch TV as if nothing had happened, when suddenly the broadcast of his series was interrupted, for an urgent message of fresh news. The news said that Seo MoonYeob had publicly stated that he was definitely not going to engage in esports. However, they have reports from eyewitnesses of his recent duel with Walker that it is quite possible that his opinion on this occasion may change. The recording from the duel was not quite clear, but according to an anonymous source, provided that the American team wins the Premier League with Korea with a score of 11-0, so MoonYeob undertakes to take part in the battle, so at least the American side claims. And according to the same American side, so MoonYeob accepted these conditions. After hearing such nonsense, MoonYeob was at a loss, because he did not say such nonsense. Korea Superhuman Battle Association. A black-haired hero in a new tracksuit flies into the office of the president of the association. The guy wants to hear from the old man who this anonymous informant is. He wants to kill him with his own hands, so the man only needs to say who it is. And also MoonYeob wants to know what kind of video is this? The part where he refuses to participate in these games was cut out of him. He is also going to kill the idiot who posted this video. After listening to the disgruntled kid, the man first of all hurries to apologize as the president of the association for such a tactless attitude to the hero who repeatedly saved the world. Such behavior from a gray-haired man awkwardly embarrassed the guy. At the same time, the president says that Walker has already won over the association of the Battle of the Superhumans of America to his side, and given the precarious position of the Korean branch, the man could not reject this offer. Also, the gray-haired man says that the public and the top have put pressure on him, so he asks for an apology not as president, but as his senior. MoonYeob understands the situation of a man named Jiho, but still. At this moment, the old man interrupts the guy and grabs him by the shoulders. The gray-haired man declares that MoonYeob should not worry, because he has come up with a great way to avoid trouble. Jiho put forward a condition under which MoonYeob will participate only if the USA wins an unconditional victory with a score of 11-0 without losing a single fighter. That's the condition he put forward and everyone agreed, so the hero has nothing to worry about, even though the level of the Korean national team is low, but not so much that in 3 games he will not get 1 murder. But these words did not calm the black-haired man a bit. MoonYeob wanted to spit on it. He is not interested in children's games and wants everyone to get behind him. The gray-haired man declares that in any case this condition is impossible, and since everyone knows the character of the hero, they agreed without any problems. So the president of the association reminds how much they went through together and asks to save his ass at least once. In return, he promises to donate all the profits to MoonYeob's favorite organizations, namely child protection organizations. Thus, the man angered MoonYeob even more, but still he agrees to help only once, and Jiho literally glows with happiness. He is even ready to kiss the generous hero, but this was clearly superfluous. Before leaving, MoonYeob once again clarifies that if the Korean team kills at least 1 player, he will not participate, no matter how they ask him later, and the man undoubtedly promises this and declares that he can believe him verbatim. After that, the gray-haired man offers to have dinner together once. Jiho treats them. He will not break his promise, but he mentally apologizes to MoonYeob for earlier, because the matches were already lost for earlier. Soon, watching TV again, reporters say that it became known that MoonYeob officially accepted the US offer, and there were hundreds of these emergency releases. But the guy cursed this game, because instead of showing his favorite dramas, rotten news is being played all day. The damn old man made a fuss. MoonYeob knew that upon his return it was worth breaking all ties with him. Suddenly, there is an emergency statement on TV that the series about the rapidly low kick will be replaced by a special issue about Seo MoonYeob. After hearing this, the hero cursed the whole world for being immortal otherwise. However, it does not matter. Due to the fact that he could not enjoy watching the series, the guy in a tracksuit decides to go outside. There he also notices Baek Ha-young training. She was happy with the speed and instantly caught the thrown ball with her weapon. Jiho praises his daughter, but asks her to speed up a little, yet she is a support player who deals additional damage. While Jiho was rubbing some game into his daughter, the black-haired man decides to use the analysis and look at the parameters of the girl. Ha-young had a very high speed, but her agility reached the limit. Moreover, the maximum value of the Ha-young parameter cannot be compared with her father in the past, so she is simply not able to do what Baek Jiho is tired of her, but the upper indicators of her strength and endurance are higher than her father's. MoonYeob can't believe that with such data she was assigned the role of support. Perhaps this approach worked with him for Jiho, but for his daughter this path of development is a huge mistake. The girl falls to the ground and demands a break, after which she notices her uncle who is completely immersed in his thoughts. MoonYeob reflected that even if the best player of the Korean team is in such a form, the outcome in which they will not defeat any Americans is quite possible. Ha-young wonders if her uncle has seen her train? The black-haired man replies that he has seen it, and says that it is not necessary to focus on dexterity. But Jiho does not agree, because she is still a little short, so she thinks that they should push a little more in this regard. At the same time, MoonYeob explains to his friend that Ha-young is not like him, so the guy should stop developing her speed and agility, she just physically cannot become the same as her father, because she has reached her maximum. The same applies to the whip control technique. They have a similar type because of the speed and even superpowers are close, so Jiho decided to make her a support player, but still they are different. After that, MoonYeob turns to the girl and asks what she does after grabbing the opponent with a whip. Well, she replies that she will pull him and knock him down or just throw him to an ally. But this is her main mistake, she has to kill them on her own. Imitating the style of her father, she will not achieve good results. The support is not hers. Not only is she inferior in speed and agility to Jiho, so there are also no comrades next to her who cannot deal with enemies for sure. Therefore, MoonYeob says that now the most important parameters for Baek Ha-young are strength and fencing. It is her sword that will put an end to the upcoming duel. At the same time, a guy in a tracksuit takes a blade with a whip and decides to show her once how it's done, because there's nothing complicated about it. The guy grabs the target in an instant and calmly cuts it into pieces. MoonYeob asked if she remembered how to do it, but the guy stood gaping. At the same time, the black-haired man declares that it is impossible to take the enemy's life with a whip, which means she needs to master the sword as skillfully as with a whip. Therefore, she needs to train strength and fencing. At the same time, MoonYeob says that from now on she changes her position to the player who will do the main damage. But the guys under the surname Baek continued to stand motionless. At the same time, MoonYeob suggests starting Ha-young with simple strength exercises, namely 500 approaches. But the guys were in no hurry to start practicing, because 500 potted is too much. At the same time, MoonYeob left them no choice and forced them to move, because there are 14 days left before the start of the match, and starting from that day, he is going to train Ha-young on his own. The American national team, a dormitory and a training hall in Korea. John Kim is Walker's manager. He is shocked that Baldhead's abilities have improved significantly in just a couple of days. After meeting with Seo MoonYeob, he suddenly changed his approach to defense, and John even wondered what came over him. But when the guy watched from the side, he noticed that the tank's abilities increased and its weaknesses ceased to exist. If Walker grasps this style of play, it is quite possible that he will be able to break into the top 3. Of course, for drastic changes, training is needed, and it will still be difficult for him to compete with high-speed players like Nathan until he gets used to the new tactics of fighting. Meener announces that they will receive huge benefits in the future, while Walker is interested in how much they will receive if they count in money. And at the same time, John Kim announced that they would receive over $10 million. If he could master this style, then at the conclusion of a new contract he would be able to raise his annual fee by this amount. Upon hearing this, Walker demands to immediately send such a sum of money to Seo MoonYeob. The manager was shocked, but this is the usual fee for consultation. Gerald Walker intends to pull this hero back into the arena and, stretching out his hand to the TV, asks only to wait for the black-haired one for this moment. Seoul National Stadium for the Battle of Superhumans. Finally, the historic day has come when Korea will cross swords with America. As commentators say, the audience was looking forward to this match, and especially the appearance of Seo MoonYeob and a famous American player. Norad will soon find out how their confrontation will end. All the team members are aces in their field, so everyone is interested in the results of the matches, and many also want to see the player Baek Ha-young in her new role. Seo MoonYeob also hopes for her. This dungeon is an old castle from the underworld, guarded by an army of skeletons, and it is called the Palace of Marta Borni. There are 3 floors in the dungeon, and each of them has its own boss. The first floor is a skeleton warrior, on the second floor there is a death knight, and on the third floor a bone dragon and a lich are waiting. For those who are watching this for the first time, I am telling the rules of the Battle of Superhumans. To win, you need to destroy the enemy team. Points are awarded for killing monsters and players of the other team. More points, more bonus. The color of the indicator changes depending on their number. The white indicator is the coolest. The participants enter the arena, and now we have to find out how this fateful meeting will end. The game has started. The American team is immediately met by an army of skeletons on the ground floor, but the fighters confidently eliminate the obstacle, albeit slowly, but thanks to an accurate and timely strike, they organize excellent protection. At the same time, the Korean team is gaining speed and they decide to run to the boss, ignoring the monsters. Even in the second zone they just run past. Jiho, and part-time head coach, is watching the game. He is sure that if everything works out, they will certainly win. Commentators and viewers are surprised, because previously the Korean national team were known for their protracted style of play. Most likely they now have a clear goal to defeat the boss. The risk is very high, but if they succeed, then defeating him will bring this team a lot of points at once, and also if you kill the leader, then the first floor will be closed for a while. This will give them a head start before the fighters from the States. Soon the team got to the skeleton warrior, and right now they are going on the attack. However, while the Korean team is actively fighting against the monster, Walker is waiting for something. Commentators are surprised, because for some reason American players are in no hurry to join the fight. Walker and his other guys were expecting something like this, and his partner with a smile on his face offers to go straight to the second floor until the first one is closed, but the bald-headed one is in no hurry. They need to enter the zone with the boss, but Walker will not be able to do it quickly, but his friend does not mind lending him his strength. At this time, Ha-young almost finished off the monster, when suddenly an enemy player flies into her. Gerald Walker appeared on the scene. No one expected such madness. He used the hurricane superpower of his teammate, and successfully attacked the Korean national team. From such a blow, Baek Ha-young was thrown into the wall, and instantly killed. Walker praises the guys for a good decision to start looking for the boss right away, but in this game, only victory matters. After these words, the American players finish off the boss of the first floor, and the first floor will be temporarily closed after 10 minutes. But they have enough time to finish off the Korean team. As a result of the first match, the US team suddenly appeared and in an instant smashed the Korean national team. It was a complete rout. Waving at the last survivor, Walker announced that they were done for today, so the end of the first round had come, and the second round would begin after both teams had regained their strength. Ha-young slowly walks into the room. She is upset that they lost again, and even training under the guidance of her uncle did not bring proper results. When she opened the door, she saw Seo MoonYeob again, and at the same time he began his speech. The black-haired man literally sobbed with bloody tears when he watched their disgusting game, so he demands that the team listen to his advice. Hearing this, one of the crowd said that their coach was Jiho, but the hero in the tracksuit told the sucker to shut up and listen. MoonYeob had no desire to get involved in these games, but he decided to feel sorry for this team and they should remember it. The black-haired man understood the idea of quickly killing the boss, but this was clearly not enough to win. The Americans are stronger than them in all respects, in experience, in skill, and so on, so even after 1,000 battles, the chances of their victory will be 0, but the legendary hero will help this team defeat at least Walker. The Martha Borney Palace is one of the dungeons that MoonYeob once passed along with the president of the association. According to the black-haired man, this is a simple location, only the third floor is dangerous. But with the skills of this team, getting there will be a problem. The guy in the tracksuit says that they had a good plan in the first round. It would be quite good if it also worked. The guys were let down by intelligence. Killing the boss before everyone else is great, but players clearly should not forget about the main opponent, so you need to keep an eye on other players. The team wanted to get into the main monster's room faster, but they didn't scout the situation properly. The second point, as MoonYeob said, players should think ahead, because if they had killed the boss, they would still have to fight against the American team. But in what condition would they be after the boss? The guys lost outright, because they lost sight of the very basics. Having seen such a black-haired stallow, it's a pity for Jiho with such a national team. Now the black-haired man decides to finish the discussion, which he himself started, after which he got down to business. He is going to tell the guys how they should proceed, and the second round begins. Now the American team is much more active. Apparently they are going to use a 6x5 formation in this round. The fastest of them will grab the best players of the Korean national team, and Walker and the rest will finish them off. This tactic is best suited to the team's AC Walker, in which case the commentators decide that their team will definitely be defeated. However, Baek Ha-young, as soon as she appeared on the battlefield, immediately rushed forward with her team. The Korean national team usually played defensively, but now everything is different. After Baek Ha-young changed her position, she acts in a new way, like her whole team. Now MoonYeob is happy with the guys, because if they do everything as he said, then they will have a chance to win, and Ha-young understands this perfectly well. They will definitely win. The American players are again waiting for the opposing team in order to set a trap, But surprisingly, the scout sees no signs of an enemy team and reports it to Walker. He saw their new tactics in the first round, so it's only a matter of time for him when he meets with Seo MoonYeob. But still, the man is interested in what he will be like in a real fight. When suddenly the wall behind him cracked and suddenly the Americans were overtaken by the Korean team. But where did they come from? Before the black-haired man informed the team and gave evidence, the main thing in this game is intelligence. Ha-young will do this, because she is the fastest. If it suddenly turns out that there will be less than 5 people with Walker, then the guys do not need to catch monsters and the boss. There is only one road leading to Marta Borne's palace. Everyone who has played the battle knows this, but few people know there is another secret passage. It is known only to those who have been in a real dungeon. It is through it that Ha-young will need to go. She will also scout the situation there. It is difficult to find this passage, because it is somewhere in the wall, but MoonYeob helped them with this. With the help of him, they were able to find out what the opposing team was really planning. Then the 11 Groks had to go through a secret way and split into 2 groups and attack the US team. They're going to kick their ass this time.